All right, welcome to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Giammarco Jr. from Yeadon Borough PD. He has 30 years experience in law enforcement. He is a strong advocate for mental health and officer wellness, a doctoral student in public safety leadership. He has two master's degrees, a graduate from the FBI National Academy. I'm really looking forward to having him as today's guest. Welcome to the show, Chief Giammarco Jr. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Paige. It's truly an honor to be on your show. I appreciate all you're doing in the field too. We need partners like you. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you coming on here. And, when we talked offline, there were a few things that really stuck out to me. And, your passion for wellness and mental health was really obvious. And so I'm looking forward to sharing that with our listeners. But I was hoping that we could maybe just kind of dive a little bit deeper into who you are. I know I gave like a really, really quick intro there, but anything you want to share? I know that you have some interesting family history. Your dad marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And, I think you're really fascinating. So anything else you can
I,
share with our listeners would be great.
you know what? It's funny because at the National Academy, which the FBI NA was a big part of my, training and just, I remember we had to do an impromptu speech and it was like, what, titles. And I talked about titles and we all have those friends that when you call, we all have caller ID on the phone, but they want to feel important. They'll be like Chief so-and-so. And I'm like, at the time, the most important title to me back in 2020 was Mr. G or dad, right? Or husband. And, that evolves. But, so that's the way I am. Like I don't like I love being a chief, but I also my favorite title now is Pop Pop. I have we're blessed. My wife and I, Priscilla, have been together for 33 years. She's truly my therapist, my rock, my everything. And we have three grandchildren. We have two boys that are four, and then we have a granddaughter who just turned one actually today. So
Wow.
Hazel. So it's that's me. Like I'm a family guy first. I believe in family. Family's my rock. And that's probably who I am. But you talked about my dad. That was my original why. Growing up in Philadelphia, we always heard about service to others, not service to self. And my dad was a politician, so he was a professional liar by trade, as I joke around, kind of like being a lawyer, but that's a joke. So to politicians and lawyers, please do not attack me. But no, my dad would always tell these stories about all this stuff he did. And I'm like, he's BSing because he always lied about his age. And we couldn't figure out all this out until he passed away in 2004. When we went through his paperwork, he lied about his age because I was a late in life baby. I was born in 72. He was 46 when I was born. Well, here he lied about his age because he wanted to go into World War II after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. He was 17. So
Mm.
that's when the lies began. And then he talked about Dr. King, and we're like, you never marched with Dr. King. And when he passed away, we found the photo of him standing next to Dr. King, and it was like, but I mean that's where when you talk about your why, and your why continues, your why in my humble opinion, your why should always evolve. And my why has always evolved in his career. I got in to help others, which is still the majority of it, but then it kind of evolved through time. And, you know, what we saw, unfortunately, with the murder of George Floyd, my why even evolved more because my daughter Kaylin at the time, my wife's from Jamaica, so my children are, if you saw my children walking down the street, they're black, right? Because people would, they would think they're black. They are biracial, and my why really changed when my daughter wrote a letter to me about, Dad, you led with love, but you would never understand what it is to be judged. And that kind of really put me
Mm.
back on my heels. Like, wow, like I grew up in Philly. We had a diverse neighborhood. Everybody got along. But then to realize like, this still goes on. So my why constantly evolves. And that's,
Wow.
in a nutshell who I am. I'm a dad, husband first, the dad, and a pop, and this is a job. I love this job to death. My 4-year-old grandson had a mouth of babe said the other day, Pop, when are you going to stop working? I'm like, probably when I'm about 80, because I just love to work and I love to be involved in the community. And I love leading a team. I'm blessed in Yeadon. I have a great support staff and I'm blessed. Like I'm truly blessed to be a chief.
Yeah, wow. You're striking a chord with me already. You're not allowed to make me emotional in the
Oh,
first
yeah,
5 minutes
yeah.
of our
Okay.
conversation, but I really appreciate you reminding all of us that yes, we have really important jobs, careers, things that we choose to do for a living. And it doesn't diminish the fact that the work is valuable. But for you to say, hey, I love what I do. I love being a chief. I love my team. I love the community that I serve. But at the end of the day, I'm going home and I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm a grandfather, and I'm proud of that, and I think that that is so beautiful. And we should all remember that we have other things that are really important that also require our attention and things that we should be proud of. And I think we lead so often with our professional titles. And I saw this, gosh, now I'm not gonna. Catherine O'Hare. Do you know Catherine O'Hare? She just died. Actress. She was in she was in a ton of shows, but she was in
Okay.
the shows Schitt's Creek and
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
the dog show, Best of Show.
Yes.
She was in a ton of movies, and there was an interview with her that I saw, and I don't know how long ago this was, but she was in the airport, and a fan walked up and was like, "I love you. I love all your work. You're a legend. What is the role that you're most proud of?" And she said, "Being a mom."
Yeah.
Like that was the role, she was like being a mom, being a partner. And I remember seeing that and being like, what a great answer, because our careers are going to go away one day, and we're going to have our family and we're going to have those titles left. And so we have to nurture that. And so that it reminded me of that when you were saying it of like, hey, remember that we have these other titles too that are equally, if not arguably more important.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And it kind of reminds me of a story that an old timer told one of my buddies. He said, when you're on your deathbed surrounded by your family, you're going to go, "Wow, I wish I had 4 more hours of overtime," or "Wow, I wish I did a wiretap on that guy." You're going to think about the times we missed, and that's something in our career. We miss a lot of important events in our family, and they suffer. Our family truly suffers with the careers we love to do.
Yeah. And I think when we talk about longevity, I think we have to consider that. It's like, do we want longevity to have longer careers? Maybe. But do we want longevity so we can have longer lives, so we can have more time with our friends and our family and to be able to do the things that we enjoy doing? I would argue that most people, that's what they're looking forward to, right? Like they're looking forward to having longer lives and quality of life with their loved ones. And so I think that this all ties back into wellness. Like, yes, we want to make sure you have a long and successful career, but we also want to make sure that when you hang up your hat and you enter into the next chapter of your life and into retirement, that you have a very, very long and fulfilling retirement with your loved ones.
Definitely, definitely.
I had this is such a side note, but
Yeah.
I had a chief say that one of their younger guys went to a call and there was an older gentleman who died with his family around him. And he was like, I don't know if I can do this job. And he was really shooken up about it. And he was like, listen, that is the best case scenario. Like
Yeah.
that is like he left with his loved ones all around him, like if that's going to shake you up, like when that's
Yeah.
like beautiful, like
Yeah.
let's sit down and talk about it, And so I think that at the end of the day, we all wish for that. We all wish that we have people who still want to be on our bedside at the end of everything,
Yeah.
So um, I want to kind of circle back to your career. I know we talked a little about your personal life, but from a professional perspective, did you have any mentors throughout your career that helped shape who you are?
Yes, I had some great mentors, and I always say, and they, I have a supervisor now that when I was going through the loss of my father, he was unbelievable, and just because he led with his heart, and that was important. And he could call me right now, and I love doing this podcast. But if Jack Kelly called me right now and said I need your help, I would hit end and I would run over to help. And
Peace
he was
out.
just one of the guys. I mean, yeah, no, and I had like great people like Dave Ellis, who was a chief, who was a mentor, and he used to tell me, "Young man, keep your powder dry." Like, and I never knew what that meant until I started realizing, like, yeah, like just keep your mouth shut. And the mentors are super important. But I always say I learned more. Like, I love my mentors, and I go to war with them any day. But I learned more from the horrible supervisors, and you can see where I'm noting this: supervisors, not leaders. And in
Mhm.
Philadelphia, there's a term of endearment called boss. Like if you had a great supervisor or a great, great leader, you would call boss. And like I had great bosses, I had great leaders, but I had horrible, horrendous supervisors, managers, let's call them in the law enforcement vernacular, that literally I thought they would wake up every morning and look in the mirror and go, how can I screw with somebody today? And that's, I believe in that. I didn't want to be that when I became a leader. I wanted to be someone that, when I give you an order, it sounds more like a request, but my guys know, my guys and gals know it's an order. I mean, I had someone come up to me the other day and said, Chief, you've been here 3 years, and I think you raised your voice 3 times, and it was at something that you should have raised your voice. Like, you're not that guy. And, I get my point across. I work, I always say this, which is probably my detriment, and it's going to be my detriment in leadership. I always say, if we win as a team. When we lose, it's my responsibility, and I'll eat the quote unquote crap sandwich. And that's the way I lead. Like, when we go to a meeting and, council will say, oh, you're doing a great job. I said, you know what? I'm blessed to have a great team, which I believe that my team is important, and I make sure my team is recognized for everything they do. And that's important with leadership, but mentors are important. You really, and look for that mentor. Look for the person you want to be. And that's important. Someone that's upright and someone that does the right thing when no one's looking, but someone that actually has empathy and leads with empathy, but also has a desire to change and admit when they're wrong. I try to surround myself with the smartest people in the room. If somebody tells you they're the smartest person in the room, I usually walk away from them because I'm like, you're not that smart. But mentorship is important in this job. It really is. And unfortunately, as you're probably aware, and I'm sure other chiefs have expressed this to you, when I got on a job and I was a Philly police officer first, I had a guy that had a car, right? It was a big deal in Philly. Like, you had your own, I still have my little die cast medal of 2512 car. I worked in the 25th district, which was in Philadelphia. It's the title is the Badlands, because it's literally where the epicenter of the drug trade, homicide, shootings. You could imagine it's still the same. It's Kensington. But I had Joe Bannon, who was a regular officer, and Joe had 2512 car. Eventually, he went to Highway Patrol, which is an elite unit, and I got his car. But even for like 6 months, he helped train. That was great. But now you have where these officers are coming out. They might get a quote unquote mentor that has maybe 2 months on a job because of the turnover rate. So we need to work on getting those mentors to help.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And there's a few things that I want to kind of circle back to. But the one is that just because you're a supervisor doesn't mean you're a leader. And you can be a leader without being a supervisor. Right. And
Yes.
so I love that you talked about the qualities of a leader and what that looks like. And a couple of things that I wanted to kind of circle back to is one, being genuine, being a learner, being adaptable. And you said doing the right things when people aren't watching. And I think that goes back to being genuine. We've all seen it before, where people put on an act when people are watching. And then when the cameras turn off, it's a completely different person. We're not talking about that, right? We want the people who are genuine and people want to follow. And you said lead with heart. I think that that's something that for me was really powerful that you said, because I think when you can dissect that, you can say, okay, what does that mean? What does it mean to lead with heart? What does it mean to care? And I think historically, and we've almost been tricked to think that leaders have to be stoic, no emotions, no heart, no vulnerability. Once you reach the top, you're kind of this wall of like, okay, I do know everything, and I'm not allowed to show weakness, and I'm not allowed to say that I don't know, and I have to, fake it till I make it type of thing. And I think now as we have these conversations, the opposite is true. People want to lead people who are, or want to be led by people who are relatable, who are genuine. It's okay not to know everything. You shouldn't know everything, because that means that you're falling behind. You should always be striving to learn more. It's okay to be human. It's okay to have those emotions. And I think that we're starting to see that more through the conversations that I'm having on this podcast with leaders, recognizing that it's okay for you to get in front of the room and be like, yeah, I'm here for you. I don't have all the answers, but I'm here to do this with you as a team and figure out how we can win together.
Definitely. Definitely.
What do you think it means to be a great leader? I know you said lead with heart, but you said you learned from the people who did it really terribly, and you learned from some really good people. If there was like one thing that you learned about leadership or what makes a really good leader, what would that be?
you have to admit, as I said earlier, when you're wrong, right? When you tried an idea, it didn't work, but you also have to embrace change. I joke that police hate two things: status quo and change.
Mm.
But you have to realize when something's not working and admit, hey, we tried this, it's not working. Let's do it this way. But open yourself up to new ideas. And but if you're going to stick with it and make it work. And and that's the thing that I think a lot of us in this position, when we get there, I'm the chief. It's my now people can walk. I legitimately have an open door policy, and I know a lot of people say they have an open door policy, but I have an open door policy. Come in, talk to me. And I've had, I remember I was in a new role as chief probably about 3 months, and I had an older sergeant, tenure, a great sergeant, that literally at that point was looking at leaving. He was gone. He was gone. He was checked out, because of the past, the just some of the stuff that was going on prior. And but he said something to me on the street that stuck with me. He said, there was a situation where we were getting ready to the sheriff's office came out, they were going to evict a resident, for not paying taxes, an older resident. And he said, hey, chief, just because it's a law doesn't make it morally right. And I thought about it for a second. So we went and talked to the new homeowner, and we worked it out where we gave this person another week, and that stuck with me. And this sergeant and I have became like really close to the point that he's still here. He could have been gone 3 years ago. He's reinvested, because I showed like, hey, I'll take your advice. Like, yeah, I might be the chief, but guess what? Like, is it going to work? Like, is it going to benefit our community? Is it going to benefit our department? And I think as a leader, you have to be transformational. Like, you have to, you have to accept stuff you might not agree with personally, but you know what? If it's going to improve the department, if it's going to improve the lives of my officers, then I'm going to do it. And I might not agree with some stuff and some new technology. It doesn't work, but if it benefits us, you have to be transformational. And I think that's important in a leader. Like, continue to grow and continue to learn from others.
Yeah, well, I think something important to note in what you just said is you also created a space where they felt comfortable saying that to you. Like, and I think it's a huge win, when people feel comfortable and safe, almost challenging things a little bit and being like, hey, just because it's a law doesn't mean that it's morally right. For them to have the confidence to say that to you as the leader of an organization, I think is a testament to the work that you've done to create that space.
Yeah. It's important, and it's learning, right? Learning, being a leader is always about learning and evolving. And and that's the one thing, you'll hear, oh, I have an open door policy, but I make sure I have an open door policy. And everyone's voice in this department matters. I don't care if they have 2 months on a job or 30,000 years on a job. Like, your voice matters. And let's, to continue to improve. And I say my mantra every day I wake up, and it's very simple. Like, what's going to benefit the community? What's going to benefit the department? Like, what can I do to benefit the two, like the community and the department? And that's the way I go to work every day, thinking like, and sometimes sometimes when the idea fairy pops in, and I could see their look in their eyes like, oh no, the chief thought of something else again. But, like we just went through accreditation, which was huge, actually getting a department of credit. And I said it, we had an event 2 days ago the mayor hosted, just to thank the department, and hey, you guys are accredited. It's the first time in the history of the department, blah, blah, blah. And I said, hey, just because it was my vision, my idea, it took a team. I couldn't have did this by myself. Like, if without this team doing it, I might have these great ideas, these grandiose ideas, but guess what? My team has to have buy-in, and we have to work together and explain to the team why we're doing it. And they usually, the little bit of, okay, we get it, and it works. So it's
Yeah.
important.
I love that you said mantra, because I think that the more I have Chief saying these words, like the
Yeah.
more people will start to buy into it. Because if
Yeah.
I come as an outsider and say mantra, everyone's going to roll their eyes and think I'm some
Yeah.
like woo woo girl from the
Yeah.
outside. But what you just described was also a level of mental training, right? You wake up every day saying, how can we improve? How can we be the best for the department, for the community? And when you have that lens every day of, okay, what is going to move this forward in a positive way, then your scope of vision starts to expand. The creativity, the thoughts. I know you said you get that spark in your eye of like, okay, we got a new idea. And I would challenge everyone to have something that they do in the morning that allows them to either be inspired by new ideas, like what you just said, of like, how can we continue to grow and evolve? Or I can do both, having a sense of gratitude so that you are entering into that day with a positive mindset. And when you have positivity, when you have that scope of vision that zooms out from the day to day, I think that's where a lot of progress happens. If we wake up every day and we're like, we're just going through the motions, we're just in the trenches, or it's stressful or it's hard. And all those things are true, right? Like we are going through the motions sometimes, like sometimes things are really stressful, sometimes things are really hard, but it's where do we choose to direct our attention and our focus? And if every day you do that, you're training your brain to start looking for more evidence in the world that is positive. And so I don't know if you knew that that's what you were doing, but I think it's really powerful, and it was something to kind of comment on.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about wellness. So I know that, and I would argue that a lot of the things that we've talked about so far are wellness. You know, having good leadership, creating a good culture, team environment, and mentality. But I know that you are an advocate for officer wellness and mental health, and in 2023, you experienced something personal that I know, kind of shaped what you're doing today. And so I was hoping that maybe you can share what happened to you in 2023.
Yes, we on March 15th of 2023, we a call you don't want to get. My daughter with my grandson at the time, Theodore, who was 1, was staying over her house because it was an unbelievable week. My wife was turning 50. She's going to kill me because now I just gave her age on I'm sorry, Priscilla, but she was turning 50. Our youngest grandson was turning 1. Our other grandson was 1, and everything was going great. And March 15th, my daughter's at the house, and I still remember as I was getting dressed for work, she came running down the steps and she's like, "Dad, Shane's captain's on the phone." And Shane, my son-in-law, Shane McHugh, was a Philadelphia police officer assigned to the 6th District. He had 5 years as a Philly cop. Prior to that, he was a Marine for 4 years. And the captain gets on the phone, Captain Hartzell. And I still remember the call. He's like, "Chief." I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" He's like, "You need to get to Temple Hospital." He's like, we got a call. Officers went to Shane's and Katina's house, and self-inflicted gunshot wound. He's at Temple. It's not good." And I remember, by the time we got to Temple Hospital, and this is a hospital in Philadelphia that sees trauma, and it's actually in the 25th district. So I remember vividly from 96 to 2001, always going there for shooting victims but I remember bringing my daughter there and driving her to the hospital. And we walked in, and they told my daughter he was gone. And it's something that, hits you between the eyes because, and I'm sorry, as a dad, your number one thing is to protect your children. And I'm like, I couldn't protect my daughter. And then I'm like, then you start to question yourself. You're like, why didn't you talk to me? And then you find out that, there was PTSD, and, Shane had some baggage, and, you know, but it's like, why couldn't you come talk to me? And so that hit hard. That hit hard. And, it was hard to talk about. And, we talk about mental health, and I went to a, Valor. Valor is a great organization. I'm not sure the BGA sponsors it. They have Valor, Safe Leo, and I went to Valor, and I was talking to one of the instructors, and I said, and he's like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "You look like you're," because we were talking about suicide, and I explained. He's like, "You got to talk about it." And I talked in front of the whole class. I lost it a couple times, but it's good. It's cathartic to talk about it, and we're actually, as we're coming up on Shane's 3rd-year anniversary, it's like and the sad part is that district, the 6th district, went through a lot because literally 6 months later, his captain did the same thing. So the Philadelphia Police Department actually, they actually removed. It's no longer 6th district. They combine now. It's the 9th district, but it's something we live with all the time. And like I kind of at nauseum with my guys. I'm like, "You okay?" Like, no. Like we all say, look, we're all BSers, right? By I work drug work, so if I could buy crack when I was overweight, like I can BS with the best of them. But we all say we're okay. But I'm like, are you really okay? Like, if you have any issues, like look, if you're, like, let's get somebody, let's talk to somebody. And that's what we're working on here. We're trying to build a wellness program, but I want a wellness program that actually works. Like, so we're looking at different plans where Northern York Regional, Dave Lash, who's an unbelievable chief. And unfortunately, Dave lost 3 of his officers that were shot and killed in the line of duty this past year. But Dave came up with a great wellness program where essentially the officers, they'll bring a clinical therapist in, and the officers have to go there on duty. And even if they sit there for a half hour and say nothing, or they talk, it's on duty. So it's something that we're looking into. So of course, everything is associated with a cost, but I want to have something that is meaningful, not just, hey, we're going to check this box. So that's one of the journeys. And it's kind of ironic that when I did an interview, when I got this job, one of my things was getting a wellness program. And then less than 3 months later, we're burying our son-in-law after, and I learned terminology, like he died by suicide, not committed. And that's like, we're burying him because he died by suicide. And it still hurts. I mean, there's days where you look at it, my grandson is starting to ask, 4 years old, starting to ask questions now, like, why did my daddy go to heaven? And you're like, so you're dealing with that. So,
Yeah.
and I love my grandson to death, but he's all boy. And my daughter and him moved in with us since the day it happened. They haven't left, love him to death, but 4 years old, the door at 6 a.m. flies open like he's a SWAT guy. Pop, can I make your coffee? I'm like, dude, it's Saturday. Pop wants to sleep, like at least at 6:15, but wants to rough play. He's a great kid. And, but it's rough. It's rough, but that's why I tell everybody, listen, like, if you have problems, call somebody, because you leave a wake of destruction that you have no clue what you do to the family. Like, and I understand you're thinking that, you're removing yourself from the equation is going to help your family. It doesn't. It does. It really. We'd rather have you here and work with you and get you through we've all been in dark places. Look, I'll admit on here, like, I've been in dark places, and thank God I had somebody to talk to, or saw a professional, get professional help, or go to a peer support guy, go to somebody, a peer support gal, somebody that'll help you. It's important. It really is.
I really appreciate you sharing
Yeah.
that. And there's a few things I want to circle back to, but the statement of "we want you here" is
Yes.
so powerful. And so I appreciate you saying that. And I hope that anyone who's listening who might be struggling or in a dark place hears that. We want you here. We want to get you the resources to where you can come out on the other end stronger and happier and healthier. And how do we do that? And you said that you want something that actually works. And I think that has to be the mission always. It's not checking a box, because if we recognize that we're talking about human lives here, we're talking about saving lives here, giving people who have families, who have value in this world, the resources that are going to help to save their life. If that's the conversation, then it can't be a box check. It has to be something that's going to actually help them to get the resources that they need. So I appreciate you saying that, because I agree. And I think that everyone's busy. It's hard to implement new things. It's hard to figure out the what, the why, the how. But if we're going to really dissect it and say, hey, like, this is about saving lives, then the mission is worth it and the effort is worth it.
Yeah. Exactly. You're 100% right. And that's the problem with a lot. Like, we write policies just to write policies, but we need policies that's actually going to help somebody. And I always say, like, I don't look, go home safe at the end of the shift. Well, go home physically, but also mentally is just as important. Don't go home and put yourself in a bottle. Don't go home and, overeat. Like, we all have these, coping mechanisms. Like, talk to somebody. It's important to talk to somebody,
Yeah.
get it out.
And I think something else that you said earlier was really important too, is understanding that we're all really good at the BS and we're really good at hiding the things. And you said asking follow-up questions, asking better questions. We can all tell, especially, and here's a caveat to it. I think you have to know the people that you're around, right? Like, you have to know them really well. And if you know that something's off, or if you can see that something's off, how can you ask, are you okay? But then asking, if someone's like, yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Or, having these extra questions, but looking out for each other. But I know that you said that you're in progress with this right now. And you said
Yes.
that people have called you progressive.
Real quick, and to get this job, it was several interviews. The first interview was with the consultant that was doing the quote unquote headhunting for the job. The second interview was I walked into a room with seven people, and six of them were residents, and one was the facilitator. And I'm just talking about different stuff. And the lady leans over the table and she puts her hands like this. And she's like, I have to tell you something. And I'm like, yeah, she's getting close, right? Personal space. I'm like, yeah, what do you have to tell me? Like, glad I brushed my teeth today.
Yeah.
Deodorant's on. But she's like, you are the most progressive police officer I've ever heard. So I left the interview and called my buddy who, at the time I was working with. And he was, and I said, hey, I've been called a lot of stuff, but I've never been called a progressive. He's like, I guess that's a good thing. I said, and progressive, and it just, I refer more to as being common sense. Like if something doesn't work, fix it. But again, like you have to open your mind to new ideas. And
Yeah.
I think we get into a lot of that where we're afraid to open our mind to new ideas. But like, again, like eh, we evolved, right? 30 years ago, we didn't have, and you just evolve and evolve, and your why constantly keeps changing. And my why constantly changes.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the base of the word progressive, it's progress,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if someone's like, you're a person that is going to make progress in this career, you're like, that is a huge compliment, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's what we hope for, right? Like we have to understand that times change, people change, things change. It can never be a destination conversation. There should always be this perspective and hopefully also action behind making things better. And I think again, it's harder to do that, right? And I've done these things before where I'm like, yep, everything's working really well. And then if you look at it and you say, well, is it? Is it the best it can be? Like maybe it is working really well, but could it be better? I think if we always have those question marks of like, can we do it better? Or obviously if something's not working, like we have to do it better. And what are those things that we, need to do to make things better? So I like that someone called you progressive because that means progress. And I think
And
that we all hope that there's progress, right?
yeah, and just on the progressiveness, so some of your viewers don't go, oh my gosh, he's on the left coast, and I'm in Philly, so I'm really not left coast, but I think progressive with common sense. Like for example, I was involved with New Blue, which is an organization that does a lot where they realize we have a great system, but there's flaws and it should be, it should be changed, right? So we work on projects, but we had this conversation going on where they're like, we need to remove some keywords from law enforcement, and one was warrior. Now listen, I'm still that guy that gets giddy, and I see my guys going in the back of a Bearcat, and I wish I could be there because I was a SWAT guy for over 20 years, and I miss being a SWAT guy. Like I miss that because now I'm the chief. But I'm like, well, wait a minute, I'm like, listen, you got. I like warrior in the vernacular in certain terms. I'm like, because as a chief, I want a warrior to go into a school. If there is an active shooter situation, I want that person to be a warrior, to go to the threat, neutralize the threat. But then I also want that person to become that caregiver to, talk to those people in there that witnessed this horrific event. I said, so two things can be true. You can be a warrior, but you can also go back to being that empathetic person. So I'm not, I'm progressive in my thinking that you can be two things. And that's,
Yeah.
just to set that record straight, that there's times where you have to be a warrior. This job is ugly. There's times where you have to go hands on with somebody. There's times where you unfortunately may have to use your firearm, but to know when to do that and to also know that two things can be true.
I completely agree with you. Completely. I think that we have to understand the dynamics of humans, right? And even what you said before of like, hey, I'm a chief, but I'm also a dad. I'm also
Yeah.
a husband. I'm also
Yeah.
grandpa,
Yeah.
is it pop, grandpa?
Pop up, pop
Pop
up,
up,
pop
pop
up.
up.
But yeah,
But
yeah,
if we can understand that like we wear different hats, I agree with you, two things can be true. And I think that for us to understand you can be strong and you can be vulnerable. You can be effective at what you do, and things can also get to you sometimes, and for you to be like, yeah, I need someone to be a warrior, but then, they're also a softie and they're going to be
yeah,
like playing with their grandkids sometimes. And like, we have to understand that we're not one dimensional, we're multidimensional when it comes to being human. So I agree with you that two things, I would even say five things can be true
yeah,
at once. I wanted to, kind of circle back to this idea of progress implementation, action. And I know that right now it's your primary focus is to build out wellness programming that is effective, that's going to save lives. What does it take to truly make positive change? How, because I talk to a lot of agencies that are struggling to understand one, what is effective? How do you gauge effectiveness? Two, how do you put it in the budget? How do you afford these things? Three, how do you get people to utilize these things so that it is effective? So maybe you can give a little bit of, or shed a little bit of light into your brain and, how you're doing some of these things.
We're looking into different programs right now. So we have a great FOP, Lodge 27 in Delco, Delaware County. It's Delco for short. And they actually have a great peer support. And we
Mhm.
had a situation, we had a critical incident where they came out right away. So we rely on them. Then we also have MVP programs, which Officer Leo Doyle, he's a full-time police officer, but he's also went back to school to become a therapist.
Nice.
So he's great, and for addiction, we have Andy Callahan. He started bottles and badges for officers that may go down that route with alcoholism. But the way we're going to build it out, we're trying to get support to actually have a therapist on call, if we need the therapy, and the other thing we're working on is kind of like a whole holistic program, like not only physical, but your mental health. And also I'm even thinking about when we start hiring other younger officers, to bring their family in and kind of explain like, hey, this is what happens, right? Like they may come home, like these are the warning signs like to look for, like if they start to become distant, or now they're going in the basement, they're not spending time, like not to scare them, but almost an overview of like this, have our spouses come in, like where my wife, after 30 years, she could say, I mean, she knows what kind of day, or she also knows, like we joke because I have about a 45-minute commute, and there's times where I'll say, like, I'm just like, she's like, listen to your music, decompress. We'll talk when you get home. Cause she knows there's times like when I had a day from hell, I don't like, yeah, I understand it's important. It's important to her, but we also have that 15-minute rule. Like when we get in, no matter what, we set 15 minutes aside and talk. Like I have 15 minutes, she has 15 minutes to
Mm,
express what's going on. But you have to have everybody, but it truly takes a village, and you have to get the families involved. But we also have a great clergy support team. We have 7 clergy members that come in if there's a critical incident. And what we did is, because it's free volunteerism. So we actually embedded a clergy member with each squad. So I have 4 squads that work that rotate. So each squad has a clergy member, and we have 2 auxiliary just in case we need something. But again, you hit the nail on the head with the finances, right? Like with the budget, we're trying to budget a program in, and we're looking for programs that can do everything, like have the wellness component, but also have the mental health component where officers can call. But I also think it's important, taken from Dave Lash's playbook, where it's like, you know what? Yeah, I know it's a pain, but you're on duty. You're going to go upstairs to a private office, and you're going to sit down with somebody. So you can just sit there and look at them for a half hour, or you can talk to them for a half hour. Nothing, nothing's going to be reported back to us. And that's the other thing, breaking down the stigma, right? Like if, and I remember I had to, probably one of the hardest, assignments I had. I actually ran the protection detail for, at the time, the Attorney General, Josh Shapiro. Now he's the governor of Pennsylvania. Well, he was the governor when my son-in-law passed away. He actually came to the funeral. He drove all the way down from Harrisburg to Delaware. And I remember we hugged and embraced. And he's like, "What can I do for you?" I'm like, "Gov, we need to break the stigma." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "If I have a cop come to me and tell me that they're in crisis, you got to worry about them getting like legally committed." Like, so that there's a lot of, that's why I think there's a lot of stigma with that, in mental health. Like we have to come up with you know, legislative where we can protect these guys. Like if you come to me, tell me you have a drug problem or an alcohol problem, I'm going to send you, as they call it, the farm. I'm going to send you away for 30 days. You're going to come back. Oh yeah, I'm great now. But if you have a mental problem, like you get a stigma, like, oh, he had PTSD, or, she's not, she's mentally, no, like we look, if I have a cold, I'm going to treat the cold. If you have something wrong with you emotionally, we're going to treat that too.
yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that it's hard for people to understand those things because it's not tangible, right? Like if someone breaks your arm, they're
Yeah.
like, okay, like I got to go in to the doctor to mend this broken arm, and it's tangible and people understand, and there's no judgment on that. Maybe there's like an eye roll of like, man, I got to pick up I got to pick up overtime
Yeah.
now to like cover the shift or whatever. But,
Yep.
they're like, okay, like they'll be back after that broken arm. And so when it comes to mental health, I agree with you. I think that because it has been so stigmatized for so long, it's not something you can see. And so I think it's hard for people to understand. And therefore, there's that judgment where people are like, oh, you can just get over it, right? Well, could you just go work on a broken leg?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? No, like you would never ask someone to do that. So why are we asking people to come in and work when they're having mental or emotional challenges where they need the resources to be able to mend like you would any sort of physical ailment? So I appreciate you saying that, and I agree. And I also appreciate the focus on the family and having a better understanding and looping them in and having education. And I love that you said that you and your wife have a 15-minute rule. Like those are the little tangible nuggets that I love through this podcast that I'm sure anyone who's listening will agree. It's like simple things that we can do to inspire people, educate people, to have the resources to create more health within their life or their family unit. For you to say, hey, it works for us to go every day. I have 15 minutes and she has 15 minutes. And that helps us to decompress and to communicate and build a stronger bond with each other, I think is great. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
My final question for you, I feel like I could talk to you actually for a really long time, but we talked about mentorship, we talked about wellness, and we know that the workforce is getting younger or we're getting older or both. I don't know which one is true, but for the younger generation, the younger men and women who are coming into the career today, what words of wisdom would you share with them?
I First of all, let me thank them for coming in. And I look at this as a calling, right? Like this is how I look at my career span. I was a call. This was a calling, kind of like, but I would say, and I know they hear this all the time, and it's true. Find out what you love to do in this job, and you truly never work a day in your life. Find out, get that passion. If you want to be, look, if you want to be, a patrol officer for the rest of your life, that's fine. But just figure out what you love to do in this job. And I would kind of if I could have a part two of that, if you feel like you want to go into leadership, please, by all, it's great, right? It's great aspirations, but go into leadership for the right reason. Don't just go in because you want to make more money. Don't just go in because, hey, somebody harassed you. Now you can harass them. Now you can turn the tables. But it's a beautiful career. And if you chose this, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because, there's a lot of stigma attached, but be the change you seek. And that's the most important thing. Figure out what you love to do in this career. And you pointed out earlier about, the officer that witnessed that the death of the individual. The career might not be for you, right? And that's okay. Like, this career may not be for you. Like, we used to, when I first got in the academy, have you ever been punched in the face, kid? Yeah, I've been punched in the face. Okay, you're okay. Where the people that weren't punched in the face, just not for you. No, that's not true. That's what I'm saying. Like, figure out what you love to do. And again, you'll never work a day in your life. And there's going to be bad days, but they're more not, they're better days for me.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you. I
much for
appreciate
coming
it.
on here. Yeah, no, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate your time.